Hey everyone, what is going on? And welcome back to another meta guide. So all three open leagues, the Great, Ultra, and Master League, begin tomorrow. So you can play whichever league you're comfortable with it, whether it be the Great or the Ultra or the Master League. So we're talking about another meta guide, and it's going to be in the Great League. Now, I'm not going to do meta guides for the Ultra or Master League this time around. I already did them this season. I did the Great League as well, so if you watch that, maybe you don't have to watch this one. But at the end of the day, it is the Open Great League, so if you want to get familiar again with the meta, you can definitely go ahead and do that. But yeah, I mean, the Open Great League, definitely a pretty big meta, so we're going to go ahead and dive right into it and see what we got going on for us. So for the S rank, the first Pokemon leading things off, going to be a Cresselia, super tanky. Now, Cresselia, there are a couple different movesets you can go with when talking about Cresselia. You can go with the Grass Knot Moonblast, which is probably what I do prefer in the Open Great League. But, of course, if you go that moveset, you don't really have anything to hit Fire types with. I mean, Fire types resist that moveset. That's why sometimes you do see Future Sight. I feel like that's probably more so common in the Ultra League, the Fire Pokemon. In the Great League, you might see the Skeledirge, you might see the Talonflame, but it's not as common as the Ultra League. That's why I feel like in the Great League, I'd probably go with the Grass Knot Moonblast variant, but Future Sight is another option as well. Next up, we have Registeel, of course, pretty tanky Pokemon. And Registeel, not pretty tanky, it's really tanky, but it's good at flipping matchups, right? I mean, Registeel can definitely threaten shields. It's just a really great Pokemon. Even if you safe swap it and they respond with like a fighter, for example, like Poliwrath, I mean, you're still going to pick up a shield with a Zapcan, and you could probably pick up a shield against Annihilate. I mean, maybe. I don't know if you can or not. But, I mean, the Zapcan is going to do a lot of damage regardless. So, definitely just a great safe swap or a great Pokemon in general. Then we have Lickitung. Lickitung has always been a great safe swap, so we're talking about safe swaps. Lickitung definitely up there as well. I guess you do see it in the lead occasionally, but I mean, it's a safe swap. I feel like it works best, and I love keeping it in the back if you have a really good one. It is expensive, of course. It is an XL Pokemon, but still really strong. Just can take hits, and it could win some matchups that you might not necessarily expect it to win. Then we have Gligar or Shadow Gligar. So recently we did have a Team Rocket event where they did re-release Gligar into Rocket's Grunts, and I was able to get a pretty decent Shadow one, so I'm really happy with that. So I personally have a good one now. I had one before, it was awful. It got up to like 1475, I think, 1478, something like that. But now I have one that actually lands right on 1500, and it's actually pretty decently ranked as well. Nothing crazy, but it's pretty decent. Definitely better than the one I used to have. I recommend the Shadow one if you have the Shadow one. If you don't have the Shadow one, the regular one will work. You do have more bulk. You just don't have more attack, but still really strong Pokemon, of course. And then Feraligatr or Shadow Feraligatr. So if we're talking Shadow or non-Shadow, if you have the Shadow, regardless of the rank, I would definitely go with it. I actually have a pretty decent rank one for the Great and Ultra League, so I'm lucky that I kept mine. But I understand not all of you are, and I mean, at the end of the day, Totodile isn't even in Grunts right now. But even if it was, you can't TM Frustration. Hopefully it comes back with the next Rocket event, which, from what I understand, is coming at the end of the month, although I'm not positive on that. But that's what I heard people saying. Did they announce that? I don't know. But either way, hopefully Totodile comes back, because Shadow Feraligatr is just absolutely so incredible. I mean, it's crazy how good Shadow Feraligatr is. I've beaten Azus with it. And I mean, I know the Shadow Claw is neutral, but all the charge attacks are resisted. I mean, it's just such a great Pokemon. The Hydro Cannons come out so fast. Do I think it's worth using a regular one if you don't have the Shadow? I do think it's worth it, but it's not as good. This is one where I feel like you really do want the Shadow variant. There are other Pokemon that I would prefer non-Shadows, or that I could see both ways. Like Gligar, for example. I can understand like the non-Shadow also does really well, and I used to use that before I got my really good Shadow one for Gligar. But with Feraligatr, I really like the Shadow damage. But next up, we have Scumfin, of course. Scumfin, ever since they got the Steel Wing buff last season, actually a pretty powerful Pokemon. You love to see it. So yeah, Scumfin, definitely a great one. It has to stay away from water types. I mean, I guess the Brave Bird is still doing a lot to some of the water Pokemon. It's still a great Pokemon, of course, but there are a lot of water types, but it is really strong. Then we have Lantern, of course. Lantern, if you're looking to counter the Scumfin, Lantern is a good way to go. Lantern, they actually tried nerfing at one point, but they made Spark. Okay, so it takes longer to charge up with Spark, but Spark also does more damage, so I don't know if it made Lantern better, that's debatable, but it definitely didn't really hurt it that much, because Lantern is still really strong as ever. And then we have Wishcash, or Shadow Wishcash. This one I could understand both ways. I've used the regular one for a long time. I just built the Shadow one this season, but both of them are good. I mean, I thought Scold was going to be nerfed this season, it was not, so it's just as strong as it's ever been. Yeah, I mean, just a powerful Pokemon. Of course, that Scald damage is no joke, and then the 50% chance to debuff on top of that. Then we have Annihilate. So Annihilate, of course, was introduced last season, so really strong Pokemon, a really strong counter user. Metacham kind of fell out of the meta. I mean, you still see it, I guess, occasionally, but Annihilate and Poliwrath is where it's at. Both of those Pokemon rose to fame, for sure. Moving on to the air rank, we do have Swampert. Another Mud Boy, Wishcash, I do feel like definitely overthrew Swampert. But Swampert with those Hydro Cannons does come out really fast, so it's actually not a bad Pokemon. Carbink, you know what, there's so many answers to Carbink, right? We got the Registeel, we got the Feraligatr now, we got the Gligar, we got even Skarmory, just because the Steel Wing is double super effective, whereas Skarmory used to, with Air Slash, Carbink used to do well against Scumfin, right? But now, since Scumfin has Steel Wing, it does well against Carbink. I mean, even the Lantern, the Wishcash, and I mean, it's just like there's so many answers to Carbink, and all those Pokemon like really on top. So it's gonna be difficult to use, but at the same time, I mean, Carbink is a Pokemon that, whereas like even though like Gligar has Dig, for example, like you can still put in a lot of work with the neutral rock throws, rock slides, right? So I mean, it's still a pretty good Pokemon for sure. And then we have Mantine. So Mantine, of course, all of Mantine's moves did get boosted at one point. We got the Wing Attack, the Aerial Ace, the Water Pulse. I guess to be fair, Ice Beam never got buffed, but the other moves did. Although I still think you want Ice Beam over Water Pulse. Maybe it depends on the team you're running, but and then we have Mandibuzz. Really tanky Pokemon. This is a Pokemon that Carbink walls, if we're talking about Carbink. But no, I mean, Mandibuzz, yeah, really strong Pokemon for sure, just because it's really tanky. Bastiodon, okay, so Bastiodon kind of suffers the same fate that Carbink does. It needs to be able to, I guess, wall the Pokemon it's going up against, or at least like resist or take neutral damage. It can't be weak to the Pokemon. For example, like Wishcash is going to destroy it, and all your moves are resisted anyway. So Bastiodon is kind of like a double-edged sword. It is good, but it needs the right matchup. And then we have Quagsire, another Mud Boy. Again, better options, I think, but Quagsire is not bad as well. Or Shadow Quagsire. And then we have Azumel. Of course, Azumel is a really good Pokemon too. Bubble was buffed last season, but even still, it's always been a consistent Pokemon. And then we have Charjabug. Charjabug, ever since it had the Community Day and got Volt Switch, it's been dominating the Play Pokemon series as well as the Open Great League. Just really common. Moving on to the B rank, we have a Dragon type. We have Guzzlord. We have a couple dragons. We have Guzzlord and Dragonair. Both of them probably the best dragons. Goodra as well. I added to this list. I still don't think Goodra's. I mean, I still prefer the Shadow Dragonair. Goodra did get the buff this season because of Aqua Tail, but you know, the shadow damage from Dragonair is really strong. So that's probably the dragon I prefer, but Guzzlord is also really good as well with that Dragon Tail damage. Galarian Stunfisk did receive a nerf, of course, to Earthquake. I also received one to Rock Slide. These were seasons ago, right? It wasn't this season, but still a pretty good Pokemon. And Empoleon did get the Steel Wing, which definitely does help it. But I mean, yeah, Empoleon has been used as well in the past, right, with Waterfall, but now it's even better with Steel Wing. Gallade, Psycho Cut. Oh my gosh, I guess the move's so fast. It takes it takes 4 Psycho Cuts to get to Leaf Blade. That's faster than Mewtwo. I mean, that is crazy. To get to Leaf Blade, 4 Psycho Cuts, and then 5 to Close Combat. Absolutely insane. The only thing it needs shields. That's just it, right? Because like it really can't take a hit, especially if you run the Shadow variant. And honestly, I probably would go with the Shadow one just because you have no defense anyway, so you might as well boost your attack. So I feel like you definitely do want the Shadow one on the Glade, but the regular one can definitely work as well. And then we talked about the dragons, and then Poliwrath. Yeah, same as Annihilate. Poliwrath, actually, I feel like it's more play this season, just because, compared to, like, last season, even though it got the buffs last season, just because that Feraligatr is so common, and you resist every charge move it has, no matter what moveset it has, even if it has Crunch, you resist that. So, yeah, that's where Poliwrath has the advantage over Annihilate, right? So, yeah, I mean, a really, really powerful Pokemon. Both those counter uses are really strong for sure. Okay, cool. So other options, we do have the Vigoroth. So Vigoroth is another counter user. It did get Rock Slide last season, so it's much better than Bulldoze. It's very consistent body slam spam. I mean, it is weak to the other counter users, right? But I mean, other than that, it's a really, really strong Pokemon. Then Pelipper, I think Mantine actually has the advantage over Pelipper just because of its bulk. But Pelipper, I used to hit Legend years ago. I don't remember what season it was, but it was a while ago. Skeledirge, I feel like it's better in the Ultra League. I feel like the fire types probably have a little bit more play, like the Skeledirge in the Ultra League. There's just so many water types that are gonna, you're gonna see a water type, right? We got the Feraligatr this season, but then you also had the Lantern, the Wishcash, Azu previous seasons. I feel like it's difficult to run Skeledirge, but if you get the good alignment, then it could do well. Cloudsire is made of bulk. Not a bad Pokemon at all. Definitely a couple different movesets, right? Do you want the Stone Edge or do you want the Sludge Bomb? You definitely want the Earthquake on it, but which second move do you want? And Zwiley is another Dragon type. We talked about dragons. I feel like, as I said, there are better dragons like that Shadow Dragonair, but Zwiley is another option. Abomasnow did get Icy Wind last season, so not too bad, not too bad. Wigglytuff, probably the best Charm user. It does have Icy Wind as well. It got that. I believe that was last season, right? I'm pretty sure that was last season. Toxapex, definitely a bulky Pokemon. Venusaur, Gliscor is not as good as Gligar, but still, I see it once in a while. I see it more so in the Ultra League, but I still don't see it that often. Venusaur I kind of skipped over, but Venusaur, of course, probably the best grass type, unless you count Cresselia. Cresselia is not a grass type, it just has Grass Knot. And then Giratina, you can get Giratina in the Great League. I do have one. It gets up to 1474, but who cares? I mean, I'm just happy to have one, right? And it's actually pretty decent. It was fun using it, so I'm definitely going to use it again. And then Defense Deoxys. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on over to the solid team options. So for the first team is going to be a Dragon type. I put Guzzlord. You could put Shadow Dragonair if you want to. And then I have Feraligatr and Mantine. So instead of the Mantine, you can go with like Lantern if you think you're going to see, like the Feraligatr, for example. I think Lantern could be a good spot to put this in, or like another counter user, or not another counter user, but like a counter user in general, like Poliwrath. And then next up, we have another team, ABA Flying, Scumfin in the lead with Wishcash and Gligar. I would say Gligar is a safe swap, because here's the thing, like, Gligar, or it might be the Shadow variant, definitely would do better, but like, let's say you safe swap Gligar, you have a wing attack advantage, you're going to outpace them to the Aerial Aces. Against the Feraligatr, so if they respond with Feraligatr, your Gligar is totally fine. Obviously, you have to shield, but I mean, you're just doing. Maybe that's only the Shadow one, though. I'm not sure, but it's actually pretty good. Yeah, so I mean, pretty strong team. I think pretty strong team. And then next up, we do have Cresselia in the lead with Annihilate and Registeel. I think Registeel, as I mentioned, can be a pretty good safe swap because even if they have a counter user, you're going to threaten a shield, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to threaten a shield. And then, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, really strong team. The next up, we do have the Shadow Feraligatr in the lead with Lickitung as a safe swap, and then Charjabug. So, of course, Charjabug hates Gligar, and Feraligatr is going to like Gligar, especially if you have or if you tie on energy, because you are going to win CMP against Gligar, or if you have an advantage with the Shadow Claw damage, as we mentioned a little earlier. Lickitung was always a great safe swap. We also mentioned that earlier. Next up, we have Shadow Dragonair in the lead with Wishcash and Scumfin, a common team we've seen last season, and it's still really strong this season. Shadow Dragonair works really well. It makes a great core with like Wishcash. Wishcash and Scumfin go well together. Just a great team, very consistent as well. And then the final team is going to be Double Dragon. So a friend of mine last season actually hit Legend with Double Dragon. It wasn't Goodra in the back, it was Dragonair and Dragonite. So you could go that route if you want to, or you can go with another Dragon as well over this, but it was Lantern, Double Dragon, but double Shadow Dragons because of the Shadow Dragon and Dragonite. So that may be a good way to go. if you want to go the Dragonite over the Goodra. But I did put Goodra on this team just because Aquatail was buffed, so double Aquatails on this team. Anyway, that's going to be it for this meta guide. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Have a good day. Bye.